let's go. Right, there are opportunities the whole way through for you guys to ask questions and have a little bit of a chat after each section. If there are any questions during kind of when I'm speaking and stuff, and you want to say it at the time, then put it in the chat feature, so you can go up to your screen and put in the chat, and then I'll go through the chat to answer the questions if you don't feel like speaking up and butting in at the time. Is that all right with everyone? Yeah. Okay, so let's rock and roll. Becoming a Team GBR young rider, I think that is what everyone is here for, I would hope. So what we're going to cover, we're going to cover goal setting, training, more in a sense of how to plan your training, how to set it out and things, rather than specifically what to do. What I learned at championships and kind of my top tips for championships and what to expect. A few of the top tips and a little bit about social media time, and then social media use, not time. And then we'll have a little bit of kind of question time after each section. So, first of all, I thought I'd tell you who on earth am I, because you lot probably haven't got a clue. So, I am now a very ex-young rider. It's been 8 years since I was young enough to be called a young rider. However, I represented GB at young rider level 4 times with my horse Tizzy. And then we went on the same horse to represent the seniors at the World Equestrian Games. So I've done 5 championships, and I've also competed in a couple of kind of team European events, kind of a little bit Euston Park Nations Cup. So I've done a few of them as well. And also, I am a human physiotherapist and a certified strength and conditioning specialist for humans. So that's kind of where my knowledge base comes from. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of a background of why I'm here talking to you, because you're like, who is this person? So let's get to it. So the first thing we need to think about is goal setting. So first of all, why on earth do we do that? So it gives you purpose, basically. If you don't know where you're going, you don't know how to get there. So the first thing you need to think about, and we're going to go and really break this down and go into kind of different sections of goal setting now, how we do it. So we're going to kind of go through how to make a goal. Is it a goal or is it just a dream? Things like that, and when. For me, I like to kind of almost plan my goals when I first get a horse, and then at the start of every year, and kind of continually go over the goals depending on what happens, because we all know horses quite often just do what they want and like to mess up our goals. So let's get on the next slide. So goal setting. The picture here is actually my mum holding on to Tizzy when we were waiting for the selectors to choose the team for WEG. And as you can tell, she found it quite stressful, because that was one of my long-term goals, and she knew that if I didn't get selected, I would be completely crushed. So we can kind of break down goal setting, first of all, into long-term and short-term. So the long-term goals are like what your ultimate dream would be. So Joe, if you had the time, the skills, the backing, what would you really, really, really like to achieve? And then the short-term goals are kind of more in the here and now. So what do you want to achieve this year? What do you want to achieve this month, today? And I'm sure you've probably all heard this lots and lots of times before if you're on the Young Rider Squad, but your goals need to be smart. So this just means they need to be super specific. So it's not kind of good enough to say, oh, at some point in my life, I would like to qualify for Team GB. It needs to be like, I would like to qualify for Team GB now, in like 6 months, in 3 years. It needs to be measurable. So there's an end goal, and there are things that you can do to get there, and you can measure how you're doing, so you can see how you're progressing and things. It needs to be achievable. So I think, especially in the UK, we're not very good at setting really big goals. I think we could do so much better and dream so much bigger if only we had a little bit of self-belief and motivation to do it. So although you might think that winning a team medal at a championship might not be achievable, if you believe in yourself and you truly put the effort in, then it definitely is. But if you're a young rider and your goal is, you say you want to win a senior gold, then that's probably not achievable because of the weight limits, and the youngest are usually larger, so you're less likely to do it. So make sure it's achievable, make sure it's realistic, kind of along the same lines. You know, if you're an endurance rider on an endurance horse and your goal is to be an international show jumper, probably not very realistic. And that it's timed, so that, Joe, for me, in 7 years' time, I'd love to have, my goal is to have another horse doing well at senior championships. So that's my time, 7 years. So goal setting, how are we going to do it? So we can break your long-term goal down into 3 sections. So outcome goals, they're the end result. So that would be winning a 120. Then your performance goals are the levels you need to go through to achieve it. So you need to have completed a novice season, you need to have stayed under a certain time for your 80Ks and things like that. So that's kind of, outcomes are against other people. It's an end result. You can't really control them. Whereas performance, it's all about you and how you do things. And then process goals are how you achieve the performance goals. So if I want to do my first 120, how do I go about achieving that? How many rides do I need to do? What speed do I need to ride at? How do I need to train? So you guys can do this as you go. What is your ultimate dream? Like your long-term goal? What do you want to get done? What would you like out of young riders? Now, it doesn't really matter. It doesn't have to be like massive, like winning a championship medal. It can literally be as simple as getting around your first 120. For me, my long-term goal would be an individual senior championship medal, which is pretty big, I know, but that kind of stuff motivates me. So let's go about breaking it down a little bit more. So I like to take my long-term goal and then work backwards from it. So if I want to win a senior championship medal, at the moment, my horse is not even a novice, hasn't even done its novice qualifications. So how long do I think it's going to take me to get to that point? Well, I think you need a little bit of championship experience, or a horse needs a little bit of championship experience, or at least huge mass start and race experience before they're going to really perform well. So they need a couple of championships under their belt first, which leaves me at about 7 years if everything goes to plan. So that's what you need to do. So work back from your goal into small steps and see what each element you need to get done before you can get to that ultimate goal. So then I like to kind of break it down a little bit more. So breaking down the short-term goals. So if you have a little look at my year 1 would be novice. So my outcome for that year, I would want to complete 3 novice rides to prepare my horse for FEI. So performance-wise, I need to do it at a certain speed. I need to get the heart rate of the horse as low as possible and prevent it vet as quickly as possible. And I don't treat the graded rides like graded rides. I don't really mind so much what grade I get. I like to use them as if I'm racing, so that you're constantly preparing your horse for that long-term goal. So the process for that is training my horse well enough to maintain the speed, learning what a certain speed feels like on that particular horse, teaching them the crew points, and kind of really getting your routine down, getting to know that horse really well so you know how to crew them. So this is a little chat time slide. This is just a slide to show how short I am compared to the Dutch Young Rider team. So does anyone have any questions about goal setting? It's fine if you don't. I'll give you a couple of seconds.
Like, when it comes to goals, Beth, have you ever had times where you'll set a goal and then considering how your horse feels or how your horse reacts to something, you feel really like unmotivated to go towards that goal? So like trying to keep the motivation for that goal in a sense?
100%. So this year I was meant to take my youngster to his first novice ride. That was my goal at the end of the year, take him to his first 40k. He didn't even make it to the initial vetting. So we got to the venue and he just completely freaked out and his heart rate was not going to be low enough to even pass the first vet. And it does really demotivate you. And I'm like, oh my gosh, why do I even bother? But the thing that drives me is the fact that I really want to get to a championship again. So having that long-term goal, when the short-term goals go wrong and you feel like everything is against you, it keeps that little fire going because you're like, you know what, I'm gonna keep trying because I really want to get to a championship. Mm-hmm. Have you had an experience where you felt a little bit like it's not going to happen?
Yeah, well, we recently got a new horse, and he was going to be a horse that I'd be at least able to progress up to 40, 50k on. And over the past year, he's had multiple back problems and stomach ulcers, and lost a whole load of confidence. So it's just, even though I've got the goal in a sense, it's trying to keep the motivation for it because we've just been going backwards and backwards over the past year.
Yeah, I feel your pain. My middle horse has injured himself 3 times in the last 18 months. So I know it is hard and they throw curveballs at us all the time. I would say for him, if you almost make your goals even shorter, so literally be like, have 2 weeks of being sound, work on our confidence, have a nice time, and then do another goal for 2 weeks time. So it makes them even smaller so you can like tick off things as you go along so you can kind of keep motivated. Okay, anyone else? We shall move on from chat time. Okay. So having goals means that we need to do some training. My kind of mantra, and you're going to think I'm super geeky for this, but I am super geeky, so that's fine. If you measure it, you can manage it. So one of the biggest things is knowing how much you're doing, being able to look back and see if when you added a certain type of training, things changed. So I have a paper diary because I find writing things down really helps me. And I literally plan the 6 weeks ahead, and every week I write down what I've done, and it just helps me kind of keep track of everything, keeps me on top of stuff, and it's actually really good to look back on. Knowledge is key. So I'm from a very scientific background, family and upbringing, and obviously my job is very sciencey about physiology and kind of training in the human body. So I guess I'm quite geeky in that sense, but having that scientific knowledge rather than depending on kind of old school, almost old wives' tales and things like that. I picked this picture because if you watch Black Beauty when you're little, and they give the horse Joe the whole reason Black Beauty colics is they've offered it water too soon after exercise. Well, endurance horses are drinking water before they're exercising, during exercising, after exercising, and it's kind of those old wives' tale, not scientific evidence, that kind of is holding equestrian sport back a little bit in some areas. In some areas, it's like super ahead of the game. So one of the things I would recommend is knowing where your training advice is coming from, checking the sources, looking at scientific papers. It sounds boring. It might be. But for me, I actually find it really interesting. I like to kind of keep on the ball with things. There is a physio called Dr. Gillian Tarbell, who's an equine physio that does some really good online webinars. The Dr. David Marlin Facebook page, and he also now has a website that you can kind of subscribe to, do loads of webinars and podcasts and things. And I think knowledge is power. So the more you know, the more you can make your own decisions and not rely so much on what other people are telling you, but actually take the good bits of their advice, mix it with your knowledge and what you like to do, and build a training program. One of the big things I find is omitted, I guess, from training is rest. So I see this in human athletes all the time, and I've seen it in horse athletes several occasions, even at the top level, is that by the time the horse gets to the big race, the one like you've been prepping for and you're super excited for, it is exhausted. Not in the sense that like it's tired and things, but its muscle supply, the energy supply in the muscles, they don't have a lot of it left. So you'll find that you kind of burn out quite soon in the ride. So building in rest is super important. And I make sure I schedule that the same as I would a training session. So elements of training. So for my training sessions, I break them down into blocks of between 6 to 8 weeks. And this is just because the muscles and the body cardiovascular system, so the heart and the lungs, will develop if you give them different stresses. And stresses isn't like something like, it's horrible. That's just kind of hard work. Joe, to get fit, you need to do a little bit of hard work. Joe, we've all been there when it's difficult to walk down the stairs after a bit of either a long ride or a gym workout, and you're like, oh my gosh, my quads. So we need to give them different types of fitness training and strength training so that they're constantly adapting and developing. If you only do one type of training all the time, you'll plateau, and the fitness and the strength will plateau really quickly. So say at the start of the season, my focus will be on schooling. So I will do mostly schooling, but it doesn't mean I'm not hacking and lunging and doing all the other stuff. It's just the focus is on that one block. So you're doing mostly that. And then the next block, I'll be doing mostly distance training. So mostly kind of long, slow hacks. I'll still be doing the occasional canter, the occasional schooling. When I get into the speed work, I'll be going to the gallops more, but I'm still doing the slow, long hacks and the schooling, but it depends where your focus is for each block. So I use the short-term goals. So if my goal was doing a 40K in 3 months' time, I'd work back from that and make my training schedule to fit into that cycle. And I guess you've probably all been told about like peaking for a ride and rest and how to prepare a horse physically for things. But I like to make sure that I have one, so you can do like mini peaks as you're training through the year, but I like to have one ride that I am aiming to peak with that ride, and that's usually a championship or an end of season ride that's either a big FEI or a home international, something like that. And I don't mind if I go to a ride at the start of the season and they're not at peak fitness, but I know that they're good enough that we're not going to be at high risk of injury, but I actually know we can do better because I know that I'm training up to a different goal. So this kind of leads me to, I don't need to, so for that first 40 kilometre, I don't need my horse to be 160 kilometre fit. I don't need them to get a grade 1. So think about your long-term goal, think about your year's goal, and don't worry if you're not perfect along the way. So one of the best pieces of advice I got off a French endurance trainer is that everything is training until you decide to try your best. So if you're going to qualify for a 120 or you're about to do your first 50K, then do it kind of gradually, nice and safely, make sure you complete, and then say you've done a few of them and you decide, oh, I'm pretty good at 50Ks now, then you can see if you can get a better speed and a better grade. So you don't always have to perform at like this higher level, at your top level. You just need to be at a level that is good enough and build up from that. And it's the tiny things that you do every day. So it's like the carrot stretches that you do after your training that are going to accumulate and mean that your horse is super supple and can take nice big strides in 3 years' time when you're doing your first FEI. So, well, chat time. This is Tizzy and me having a chit chat in Hungary, I think. Anyone have any questions about training? No? Okay. Cool. Let's move on then.
Beth,
Yeah?
can I just ask you one thing, just to explain to young riders a little bit more about your speed training?
Yeah,
How
of
you
course.
feel about your speed training?
Yeah, so I think that you need to be quite careful about when you add speed training into your training. So I don't start doing any speed training until they're advanced, until they're doing their first 80k. And that's just because I think a horse needs to be really balanced and actually have a really good baseline fitness before you do any speed work, because speed work is where they're at the highest risk of injury. But the only way you're going to get a consistent, fast FEI ride and kind of be in with a chance of being competitive is if you're going between 18 to 22 kph. Now, to do that as an average speed, you need the cardiovascular system to be much, much better than that. So you're not going to train 80k all the time and train at an average speed. It's just too much miles on a horse's legs and it's unnecessary. So the way athletes, human and horse, will improve their heart and lung fitness is to train above the speed but below the distance that you want to compete at. So I will only ever do it at intervals. I don't ever do continuous speed work. You would go at anything between, so I always go at about 5k an hour above the speed, the average speed that I want to do at the race that I'm aiming for. So say there's a race coming up and the average speed to be in the top 10 is 22k an hour. I would then train at 27 kph on a gallop, do a kilometre on, kilometre off. So I'd do speed work for one and then walk back, speed work for another lap and walk back. And if I was doing Red Dragon and the average speed to win is 14 kph, I wouldn't even add speed work into my training. Is that kind of what you meant, Andrea?
Yes, thank you. That's great.
Cool.
Yeah. When you're doing your distance training, how long would you gauge, like, if you're doing like a 40 or 50k ride, how long would you do distance training rides to prepare for it?
So for a 40k, I think actually training at about 16 kilometers is enough. If you can do that really well and you don't feel tired at the end of that and your horse is really good and it can come out the next day and it's not stiff, that 16 kilometers is more than enough in terms of distance if you're aiming for 40k.
Okay.
Cool. Right then. So once you've done all your training, hopefully we're going to prep for a ride. If COVID lets us and the horse gods let us, shoes stay on, horses stay sound, humans stay intact. So I think I've said this about 3 times already now during this talk, I'm geeky. But if you want the best chance of completing a ride, know your stats. So there will be results on the EGB database or on the FBI database if you're going for an FBI, and it will show you how many people completed the ride and at what speed. I then input that into an Excel sheet and it will give me, I've got like a little formula and everything. I know, I'm so cool. And it will show me the average speed of the people that completed that ride and the average speed of the people that were vetted out. So if I'm going to a ride and I want it as a qualification, I want to be doing the average speed that is going to be the most likely to complete that ride. Also know your strengths, weaknesses and limits. So I think we are quite good at knowing our weaknesses, that humans in general, that's we're better at putting ourselves down than building ourselves up. So if you know that your horse pulls like a train for the first few kilometers, maybe walk for the first couple. if you know that your horse gets a little bit bored towards the end and you can get a little bit bored to the end, so you both get a little bit demotivated, think of a way that is going to keep kind of the morale up and keep you going towards the end of the ride. And also kind of know your limits. So if you're not sure about something, or you feel like you're a little bit out of your depth at a ride, ask. There are always people around, and it's better to know what you don't know and admit it than to try something that might be detrimental. So from knowing the stats and kind of thinking about what you're good at, what you need to work on, I like to make a plan. So for instance, if I was going to be going out and doing a 40k, I'd be like, right, on my novice, I want him to do it at 12 kph, which is actually quite fast for a novice, but that's kind of what I train them to, because I'm aiming at being faster than that for the next season. So I'd like to complete it at 12 kph. I would like to go into crew points and practice sloshing and give them water options. Maybe I would like to practice sloshing at the walk to get them ready for when we might need to go through crew points faster if we start to race. At the end of a ride, am I going to think about the gradings I want, or am I going to present as soon as the heart rate's under 64? Even things like if you're lucky enough, like I am, to have more than one crew crewing you, what jobs are they going to do? Who's going to be in charge of feeding and watering you? Who's going to be in charge of watering the horse? Who's going to have the slosh bottles? Just things like that. And this is kind of one of the things that I live by, that you only need to show anyone what you're capable of is when you want to. So if you are doing things to reach a long-term goal, you don't need to show everyone else that you're performing at your best. It doesn't matter what they think. It doesn't matter if you're at the back of a ride, if you were the slowest rider around, because you know that's one of the steps of your short-term goals to get you to where you want to be. So at that stage, don't compare yourself with anyone else. Because I think it's quite easy to be like, oh, that person went at like 14 kph or was in the top 3 and I was one of the last horses home. It doesn't matter, because they might be 2 rides off their long-term goal and you might be 3 years off your long-term goal. So performing at a ride, once you've got there, you've planned everything. My first thing is know your plan. So what are you going to do as soon as you get there? How do you set up your corral? Are you going to walk your horse in the morning? How is the venue set up? Can you have an opportunity to take your horse into the vetting area? I took Azid, who is now my intermediate horse, into Euston Park for one of his, I think it was his second 40k. He's quite a sensible horse and he was really good, but I went to ask the vets and I was like, once the FBI riders are gone, can I walk him around the vet gate? Can I take him up and down the trotting lanes? So make everything as easy for yourself as possible. Give yourself the best chance of succeeding. Practice the plan. So if you've got crew and if you can do, so at a championship, I used to pretend to be the horse and walk into the vet gate and I was like, right, Mum, saddle off, Dad, heart rate, Will, sponge the face. And they would, like, literally my crew were drilled. We knew exactly what everyone was doing, when they were doing it. And when it comes to ride day, when nerves and adrenaline can get the best of you, having that routine can really calm things down. So me and my brother have this routine that I flick my reins over my horse's head, I jump off, he clips onto the head collar, we unclip the bit. And even when I've had like a frantic loop and I feel a little bit stressed, going through that routine and through the motions really calms everything down. And it kind of just drills it into your mind. So the more stressful situations become, the more you can cope with it, because you've literally trained yourself. So once you've done a ride and you've performed and hopefully you've achieved what you wanted to achieve or not, I learn a lot more from the rides I fail at than I do from the ones I do well at. And they've probably made me a much, much better rider than if I'd done super well at everything I'd ever tried at, which I haven't done. And nobody does. And if you don't, I think you're missing out on one of life's great lessons, because failure is literally the best teacher. So analyse your performance. Where could you have done better? So in terms of, I think I've got lost quite often. One of my biggest endurance regrets is I was in the lead at European Championships with 1 loop to go, and I had a 12-minute lead, and Tizzy felt amazing, and I went the wrong way. And that's because I was thinking, oh my gosh, I'm in the lead, am I going to get a medal? Rather than doing what I normally do, looking down every turn to make sure it's not that turn, making sure I know where I am. So for that, what could I have done better? I should have kept my head in the game. I should have kept looking at the turns. But also, it's super important to have a look at what you did well, because you want to single that out and keep that for next time. So, for instance, think of something that I did really well. My crew are really good at drilling through the vet gate, and it works really well, and we really kind of mix, and whoever's taking the heart rate will say it out loud, so everyone knows if they need to keep crewing or they need to put a rug on, depending on how the heart rate is moving. So we want to keep that because that worked for us. And how would you change your processes? So if you go back to your process goals, say that one of your process goals was to change your diagonal every 5 minutes and make sure you're on the right trot diagonal for each corner. Now, did you just forget? So do you need to put like a timer on your stopwatch that beeps at you every 5 minutes? I'm sure that would probably get quite annoying, to remind you, and things like that. So that next time you go to a ride, you have a bit of an action plan, you've taken the good bits, you've run through the bad bits, and you work out what went wrong so it doesn't happen next time. And then we've got rider fitness. So I think this is probably in the UK one of the main things that just gets forgotten, I guess. And this is a quote from when I was a young rider, and I was in a talk very similar to this, and she said that a fit rider can guide a tired horse around a ride, but a tired rider can hinder a fit horse. And it's so true. The amount of times that I have felt super fit and my horse has been really tired, and I've managed to keep them collected, keep them together, stop them from slipping. But whenever I've been tired, like I've go the wrong way, the horse trips, I'm not in a very nice position, so they're more likely to be on the forehand and go lame. So this picture is me doing my little pre-warm-up. So I do a warm-up before I get on, and I also do have a little like warm-up once I am on, and my mum here is leading me around. That will probably change with different horses, because I'm not entirely sure my 2 geldings would be very amenable to me stretching on them, but that's something I would work on at home then, because it's part of my routine. In every vet gate I would warm up, and I don't do so much cardio, because when was the last time you ever saw an endurance rider out of breath? Probably not very often. But how many of you seen an endurance rider in an awful position at the end of the ride because they're too tired to hold themselves? A lot. So I do more strength and core training. I do cardio, but it's not my main focus. So strength and core, because you want to keep your body nice and upright. I find if my shoulders are down and back, my horse is more behind, I can squeeze from my butt, not cling on with my legs, so my hips are more open and everything is going more forward. So rider fitness is key. If every tiny little thing that we improve would make a difference to your horse, then you are going to be one of the biggest factors, because they are carrying you around. So chat time. Anyone got any questions about preparing for, performing at a ride, learning from a ride, or the rider fitness? No? Are you all good for that one? Okay, let's move on then. So, championships. Once you've got through all that, you've set your goals, you've done your training, you've analysed it, you've got yourself fit, you get selected and you end up at a championship. So this doesn't have to apply just for a championship. The kind of advice in this would apply for any of your long-term goals, be it ride for England, doing the junior slot, so that would be a 40k, do your first 64, anything. So whatever your championship is, this is how I would go about it. So my first bit of advice was get your head in the game. So try and stay really focused, know what you're there for, believe that you can do it, know that you've done all the hard work to get here, and treat yourself like an athlete, like a professional athlete, like Usain Bolt when he's like, yeah, I am the bomb and I'm gonna get on that track and sprint like hell. That's kind of the mindset you need to be in. Stick to your routines. So they're there to keep you on the straight and narrow, keep to what you know, keep to what has worked for you. It'll keep everything nice and calm. Everyone will know what is going on. And you'll perform better with a routine. That is the same for all sports, equestrian or otherwise. So get excited. I think I wish that I had almost put time aside to kind of take it all in and get excited about it and actually appreciate that you've made it to your long-term goal, and kind of give yourself a bit of a pat on the back just for getting there, really. So make sure everyone gets downtime. It is really easy to run around ragged, even at a ride. You probably find yourself, you get there, you're setting the corral up, then you've got to go sort out your crew equipment, and before you know it's 9 p.m, you haven't even eaten dinner. You have to then make dinner, and then you go to bed, and you've got to be up early. So make sure that you actually schedule downtime, because it's really important to take a breath, rest, which kind of moves on to my eat well, sleep well, hydrate. So without these three things, our performance plummets. So I work with a lot of elite athletes, and we make a huge deal of getting really good sleep. We make a huge deal of keeping hydrated. So fun fact. Your pee should be really, really light. So slightly yellow. And if it's any darker than that canopy in that picture in the background, you need to drink more, because by the time we're thirsty, we're already dehydrated, because humans are a very poor setup. And eating, you just need to have that energy. The better we eat, the more prepared our body is, the better our brain will work, and the better you'll perform. So don't let yourself down by running yourself ragged just before a ride. And then if you can, recce the route with your crew. The crew points are some of the most dangerous points on a ride, especially if it's a big busy one, because there are cars, there are people, you're slowing down, people are stopping, horses will spin round when they're drinking and a horse is going past, so the likelihood of being kicked is higher. You're usually concentrating on your crew, not your horse, so they're more likely to trip. So the better you know the crew points, the more you can plan where you go, where they're going to stand if they can you trot through it if you need to, where you need to walk, and it gives you a little bit of an idea of the in and the out of the crew point, because it just means that you already know where you're going, even when there's loads of cars everywhere. So, riding at a championship. I guess this could apply to absolutely anything anyway, but I would say ride every inch. So what I mean by that is that you don't take your head out of the game, you don't break your concentration for 1 second. So you've spent a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of heartache, missed out on probably many social occasions, nights out with friends to get here. Make it matter, make it count. So I'm not very chatty out on course. So if any of you ever end up riding with me and I seem a little bit unfriendly, I'm not being unfriendly. I need to concentrate on what diagonal I'm on what's coming up, on the speed that I'm doing, on the turn that's coming up. And it just means that at the end of the ride, you can literally hold your head up high and say, I did my best. I held my position. I was turning on my core. I was pushing my horse from behind. I was keeping it off the forehand. I was on the correct diagonal every time. I was changing my canter leads. And the feeling of doing your best and knowing you did it so well it's well worth it. It's really good. It doesn't happen often, but when it does, it is good. My second would be don't get swept up on the first loop. So it is super exciting, and the horses are excited, and it's really easy to like get going along in this big group, and you soon realise you're going faster than you've ever gone, and this is not the plan. So know your capabilities and don't let anyone push you. So if you're going too fast and the horse is pushing from behind, slow down, get them to go in front of you. In the end, you've got to be pretty selfish because you're looking after your horse. So it's your responsibility to ride them in the best possible way you can for their capabilities, which kind of leads us on to ride smart and using tactics. So for example, when I was at the Europeans as an individual in Germany, the French were pretty unstoppable. They were always winning medals, always getting team medals. So I thought, I'm here by myself, I don't have a team to ride with, I'll tag on to them. So because I'm not part of their team, I didn't need to worry about, well, I'm not taking my time in the lead, and I could like go behind them, let Tizzy cruise, and then when I wanted to, I could overtake and go do my own thing. But it's all about who you need to be in front of and who you don't. So I'm really lucky my mum is also super geeky, and for a ride she'll go through all of the rider stats that are in the entries, and we will have stats that will say this rider is usually out in the first vet gate, this rider usually gets faster every loop, this rider will slow down by loop 4. So then out on course I know rider 64, infamous for going too fast on the first loop, don't follow them. Or rider 28, really good rider, always gets faster each loop, that's a good one to tag on with. So think tactics. When it's your own friends and you're in the UK and you're all trying to qualify together, work together, take turns in the lead, know kind of the speed you're going at. But when you're competing and you're competing for your performance, use your tactics, use whatever you can in your arsenal. Have your vet gate drills locked down. So as I said, practice them, delegate things, set it up the same every time. So me and my brother set my vet gate up exactly the same every single time. So we know where everything is, and everything kind of just feels like that we're prepared. And then tell the team around you what you need in advance. So if you're going to a championship, you're going to have crew members around you for other riders that you're not used to having around you, and you'll have team management trying to help as well. You need to tell them what you need. So for instance, I am not very good at people asking me questions before the vetting going into a vet gate. I know I don't like people interfering with my head zone. I want to kind of get into my tunnel, go through my drills. Once I'm through the vetting, I will talk to people. I can go through how I thought that loop had gone and things like that, but don't talk to me until I'm vetted. And you need to know those things about you. So let me just, Jordan Usher, enter the waiting room. I need to admit him back in. There we go. And then kind of be honest. So with yourself, do you think that when you go out on the next loop, you can go a little bit faster, or do you think that maybe you need to cool off on the pace? Honest with your crew if you need them to do something for you or you'd like them to do something differently, and with your teammates. So kind of you get to know each other really well on a championship experience anyway, and you get to know your management really well. But as long as you tell everyone what you need and what you don't want, and everyone is on the same page, the better you get to know each other, how each other ticks, the better the team is going to run. Okay, so what I kind of, my take home of what I learned at championships, and this is a huge one, especially in the UK, because actually I think the Italians, the French, Portuguese, Dutch, Spanish do this really well. They've got some decent self-belief, but it is the main factor to success. So it's these top 2 inches, that brain up in there. You really need to believe you can do it. So the best I've done individually at a championship was a 4th at the Europeans. And I believed I could. I believed that I could get a medal. And And that was the main thing, because I was setting myself up to do well because I knew I could. And I think being confident, and it can come across as a little bit cocky, but having worked with elite athletes, you need to have that. You need to have that self-belief. You need to have that kind of being your own cheerleader and kind of knowing that you can. So my second one kind of comes on from that, is being confident in the warm-up and the start puts you in a really good mindset and makes you more competitive. If you're nervous about a mass start and warming up around a lot of horses, that's a really bad way to start a race. It's a really bad place to start mentally. So if you know that that is something that you struggle with, practice, practice, practice. Even if it means going to like a one-day local event, riding your horse around the lorry park, like things like that, so that you get confident in places where it's busy, where you're about to start a ride, because where your head is at, especially at the start, is going to play a huge factor in where it is later. So have a plan for the first few loops, then decide what you'll race the last loop with high or low risk. So what I mean by that is, when I go into a ride, I know that I want to ride the first loop at 16k an hour, and then I want to get a k an hour faster. And then I get to the last loop, I look at my position in the field, I think about how my horse is feeling and how I'm feeling, and then I go, okay, I'm going to ride this loop at low risk. So I'm gonna keep the speed at the same level, and I'm gonna ride it just to complete and make sure I get round. Or am I feeling really good? Do I know I can really push it? Can I get a placing? Will it pull my team up a ranking? And do I go for it and do the fastest final loop of my life? And that's something you'll learn. You'll learn where your limits are. You'll learn where your horse's limits are. And it's something that unfortunately does come with practice. But just make sure that you're making that as a conscious decision, because I think some people go hell for leather out of the vet gate, and actually 5k after that the horse is walking. So you should have just kept it steady, kept it low risk the whole way around. When you're part of a team, you will have to compromise, and you need to learn what is important to you and what you're willing to compromise on. So if you're going to ride as a team, you need to, so you're only as strong as your weakest rider or weakest horse. Not necessarily because they're weak, but it's probably poor terminology. But if one of your horses, their stats are that their average completion speed is 14 kph, and you know your average completion speed is 16 kph, you're going to ride at the lowest speed because you're trying to get a team medal. But if there's something you truly, truly believe in, stand your ground, because you know your horse best. You've got there, you've put the effort in, now is your time to shine. So make sure that if something doesn't feel right to you, and in your heart of hearts you know you don't want to compromise on it, try and kind of put your point across, explain why you feel like that, and most of the time people will understand and agree with you. It's all about communication. So I've said that you know your horse best, but trust your gut instincts and think for yourself. So if you feel like your horse doesn't feel good, tell someone, and think about what you need to do to rectify that, or even do you need to pull out, because it's never worth risking our horses, because they are more than just a racing machine to us. They're our best friends. I've had Tizzy since I was 10. That's coming up to 20 years. And I would never ever risk her for a race. So chat time. Any questions about championships? It doesn't have to be championships. It can be like your long-term goal, big rides, things like that.
What do you like to eat at vet gates and drink?
I like to eat in general. Actually, when I started off as a young rider, nervous energy meant that I really didn't want to eat. But my mum did not let me get away with that. So actually, the only things that I could keep down initially were Yakults, which is a very strange vet gate food, bananas and Jaffa cakes. Now, I have evolved from then with more experience. It's really good to, one, eat things that you enjoy, because at least you'll eat them. And two, if you can, think about having a mix of slow release and fast release energy, and eat the fast release first and then the slow release. So things like bananas and jelly babies are a good mix, because bananas give you that slow release, jelly babies give you the fast release. You need carbs, but you need them more in the kind of run up towards the days. So basically, at a crew point, I'll eat half a banana and drink, I like the Lucozade Sport Light, and then I add a little bit more electrolytes in. So I drink that, and in the vet gate, I will drink the normal Lucozade Sport, because it's got a little bit more sugar for the fast release energy. I'll also have sandwiches, so brown bread with jam, so you've got the slow and the fast again. Oh, I will literally anything now, to be honest. But yeah, it's all about making sure you're eating something that's not going to run out in 15 minutes time.
At the vet gates, what is that, like, of course you let your horse drink and stuff, but would you exactly give your horse anything to eat, like sugar beet or anything, during vet gates?
Yeah, so my horses have some sort of a buffet when they come into vet gate. So they have a choice of 4 feeds and unlimited. So this is because my horses don't gorge. If you've got a horse that will stuff its face and eat like 20 kilos worth of feed in a vet gate, you probably couldn't do it this way, and you'd have to actually portion it. But I leave the buckets open. So I've got soaked sugar beet, and actually I do a mix of molasses and unmolasses. So they've got the slow and fast release energy as well. And then I've got a kind of a mix, and then I've got a nut, and then I've got carrots and apples. And I've found that in the initial vet gates at the lower distances, my horses will want the hard feed, and then as they kind of get to the higher distances, so they're on like loop 3 or 4, they'll actually want more of the sugar beet and the haylage. They'll want more of that fiber, and then as you get really kind of down the loops towards kind of the last loops, what they want is the high energy pellet, because it's easy to eat and it's giving them that really quick release energy. I hope that answers the question. If not, go again and I'll try. Yeah. Okay. Any other questions about kind of big events and championships?
Just another one in general. Do you prefer riding with like a group of people, or would you prefer going out by yourself when you do rides?
So I would say I'm quite antisocial. I would prefer to ride by myself. I train by myself, but that's because I live in the middle of nowhere up a hill when I was little, so I didn't have anyone to train with. And I found it easier to, one, see what's coming up on the track. So I feel like when you're in a group, if you're too close together, you can't see like the little divots and things. And I feel like if people are talking to me, I feel like I'm being rude if I'm not talking to them. And then I'm thinking about, oh my God, they think I'm rude, rather than thinking about what I'm doing. However, I think it depends on the horse. So it is much, much easier, and it's why the European countries do better than us. It is easier to ride in a group because you can take the lead, and the horses kind of get a little bit of energy off each other. So I guess it depends on who you're riding with. I prefer to ride alone, but I know that statistically I will do better if I'm riding in a group. That didn't really answer your question, did it? It's a bit of both. Cool. Any others? Okay, let's move on to the last few bits then. So, social media use. I think for you guys, oh, I've gone back to chat time. Nobody wants to go back to chat time. Hold on. There we go. For you guys, this is bigger than it was. I sound really old then. Bigger than it was when I was a young rider, but it's true. So what you see is not the whole story. I don't know if any of you saw the the challenge Esme video that I did with a YouTuber, and she tried endurance and she rode Tizzy. Now, if you watch that video, it looks like endurance riders go 100 miles an hour all the time. Where in actual fact, we rode 20 kilometres and only 4 kilometres of that was at canter. But it's not fun to show a video of us walking and then walking for 4 minutes, trotting for 2 minutes, cantering for a minute. So the video shows mainly the canter work. So it's only showing that one bit of what was actually a 20 kilometre training session. So always think that what you're seeing isn't the whole story. If you disagree with something on social media, there might be perfectly good reasons behind why that thing is happening. So try not to be too judgmental about it. What you can post influences others and attracts sponsors. So be quite mindful that if someone looks up to you, so the juniors are probably going to look up to you guys in a few years' time, and what you post will kind of make them think about how they're training and what they want to do. So always try and be a positive role model. We're only humans, sometimes we'll make mistakes, but there was an occasion where a rider didn't have a very good experience and was traveling out to a championship and posted it all over Facebook, and it actually made the situation much worse and it doesn't look very good. So be super mindful about what you put up and kind of take a few minutes, especially if you're feeling anxious or angry or something bad has happened. Wait at least a day, and then if you still want to post about it, because it's good to post bad experiences if they are going to kind of help other people who are in the same boat, and they're not kind of detrimental to anyone else. So try and be positive, be realistic. So I shared, when Qantas didn't even get through his initial vetting, I shared that on social media. I shared it in terms of, I have trained this horse, it didn't go well, but these are the things that didn't go well. These are the things I'm going to try and do better. And it takes your followers on a journey with you, and they kind of feel like you're including them. And that's the thing that's going to attract sponsors. So that's one of the things endurance isn't very good at yet, is getting sponsored riders and good sponsorship. And it's kind of going to be you guys and your social media and how you use it and how you kind of put endurance across that is going to get us the better sponsors in a few years' time. So with that in mind, remember you represent yourself, but endurance as a whole, as a sport, and also Team GBR. So when someone looks at your social media, they're going to look at it and think, oh, the endurance GB riders are always posting like really useful stuff about their training and being really positive and helpful and supporting each other. Or if it's negative stuff, they can be like, oh, endurance riders are always kind of being a little bit bitchy and not having a great time. So just be a little bit mindful of what your social media can do. I would have an equestrian one if you want to post about that, and then you can put kind of your party photos on your personal one. But it's up to you guys. And just be courteous and kind and inclusive. So it's really easy to alienate people and say things that you don't mean that can come across nasty online. So always try to be really kind, even if people seem like they're asking stupid questions. There's no such thing. Just answer really politely, be positive. And if someone is kind of being a bit of a troll, just either ignore them completely or just say really nicely, I don't appreciate negativity. I'll take your comments on board, but if you could be nicer in future, things like that. So always try and have the upper hand, keep the moral high ground, and be mindful that what you put on social media now, in 2 years' time, if you're being selected for Team GBR, might mean the difference between you getting a sponsor and not. So that brings us on to almost the end. If I can get it to, my computer's having a hissy fit. There we go. My top tips. So plan, track and analyse everything. I find that it keeps you motivated. You can have a look at where you're going wrong, where you're going right, keep you performing well. And it just shows that you're super motivated. So when you're chatting to team management, when selectors are talking to you, if you have that kind of knowledge, you know what you've been doing, you can tell them exactly where you're at, what you plan to do, they'll be impressed by that. And they might ask for that as well. So they might ask to see your training diary. Use statistics to help with ride planning. So use the science, have a look at what your most likely speed is to perform well, have a look at rides to see which have better attrition rates, and choose ones that are slightly easier for your first qualifications, and then choose some slightly more difficult rides when it's for practice for championships rather than for a qualification. Be your own biggest fan. Like, you really need to believe in yourself. Big yourself up, not in a cocky way of like, I am the best person ever. More in a, I really believe in myself. I know I can do this. I've put the work in, and be hyped. It's a little bit American, but it really does work. And then my own little mantra is look good, feel good, perform well. I don't mean this in a really vain way that I will be doing my rides in a full face of makeup, because I'm not a very glamorous human. But in terms of, I like to be colour coordinated, I like to feel good in my ride outfit, I like to feel like my horse is well presented, because when you look good and you're feeling good, you'll perform much better, because you've got those good endorphins, you're not worrying about kind of, I don't know, are my chaps cool enough or things like that. So you'll do much better if you feel good and you don't have to worry about it, what you look like. So your best is good enough. Do not compare it with others. Especially with social media, you're seeing everyone's highlights, and probably not a lot of the horrible days. So whatever you're doing, and as long as you're doing your best, that is good enough. You will get there. It's those small little steps that you take over a long period of time that are going to get you to your long-term goal in the end. And then my last thing is learn from failure, but learn to celebrate success as well. So I think I have not been very good at celebrating my successes, and I wish at the time I had just taken the time to be like, oh my God, guys, we did it. This is awesome. Like, we've been amazing. I can't believe it. Rather than instantly go, well, I could have done that better and that better and that better. So I would say celebrate your success at the time, and then in a couple of days' time or the next day, then you can go through and analyze and think about what you could improve on. And never stop believing. So I've not won an individual championship medal yet. I was close, and it still bugs me. But I think I can, and I think we can as a nation. And I believe it will happen, even though I don't even have a horse that can do it at the moment. But one day, I will never stop believing. So that takes us to the end. This is Tizzy trotting up at a championship. She looks massive, doesn't she? That horse is 14 hands and I'm 5'2", so how she looks so big, I'll never know. So are there any questions? Because we are at the end of our talk.
Beth, as you've mentioned your height, I just, and therefore I'm presuming you're quite light. Can we just ask you a question about weights? And obviously you took part in a senior championship, that you had to be up to 75 kilos for that.
So though I am quite short, I'm 5'2", I'm actually quite dense. So I'm quite muscly and quite heavy for my height. On BMI, I'd actually come out as overweight. Now, naturally, when I was doing my first Young Rider Championship, I was 47 kilos. So naturally, I was very, very light. And that was fine. But then obviously I wanted to get up to senior level, and Tizzy is very small, and I didn't want to be carrying a lot of dead weight on her, because a weight that can hold itself and move around is going to shift and not kind of use as much stability energy from those little muscles in the spine and the core of the horse, whereas dead weight in the saddle and a super heavy saddle is going to use a lot more energy, even though it's exactly the same weight. So what I did, I was really lucky that my first senior 160 coincided with me going to university. So I was 18, and they had a really good gym. And I literally spent an hour and a half a day working out, building muscle, because muscle is heavier. And in the end, I didn't carry any lead for my first 160. Unfortunately, I did get injured in 2014 before the World Equestrian Games, and I couldn't train as hard, so I did have to carry some lead. And what I did is I had the saddler help and make kind of a bit of a custom saddle, and we put lead pouches between the saddle flaps. So it just meant that there was no gel pad banging around on the back. So if you are going to use a gel pad underneath the saddle, make sure your saddle is fitted with that there and that it doesn't bounce around and things. Don't put weight in your stirrups because they turn into pendulums and your knees will hurt afterwards. But if you put it in the saddle flaps of the horse, if you think about carrying like 2 buckets on a stick, you can carry quite a lot of weight over your shoulders across that surface area. But if you put the same weight straight on top of you, it feels much, much heavier. So if you can, use exercise to build muscle, because that muscle will move around and help your horse. If not, make sure that you work with your saddler to make sure the weight is in a safe place, that the saddle is fitted with the weight on it, and that you've practiced with it as well. So I didn't do all my training with my senior weight, but I did probably the last 6 months running up to the senior championships with full weight on.
Thank you.
No worries. Okay, someone has asked in the chat, I'd be interested if it's recorded to watch the part I missed. Yes, it is. I'm still recording. So, Andrea, I can hopefully give this to you to give out to young riders, and they can watch it in their own time. I can also post it on YouTube and people can watch it in their own time, whichever is better.
That would be fabulous.
Yeah.
Are you happy for it to go on the Young Riders Facebook page?
Yeah, of course. Everyone can laugh at my face.
That would be fantastic. And I'll just step in here now, so we don't lose you. Just to say thank you so much, Beth, for this talk tonight. It's been absolutely fascinating, and I hope that the young riders will have benefited a great deal. Fabulous.
Well, good luck, guys. Let me know how you do. Add me on Facebook or Instagram, and if you ever want to message or have any questions, I'm more than happy. Never feel like you're annoying me. I like it.
Fantastic. Just before we go, any further questions?
Beth, considering that the nights are getting shorter now, how exactly would you, like, especially with loads of us having school and stuff, how exactly would you coincide training with the shorter nights in winter?
So I have the same problem, not school, but work. I literally don't see my horses in the daylight until the weekend at the moment. What I do is, I guess I'm quite lucky. I have a floodlit school. So in the winter, I work more on balance and strength. So lots of groundwork, pole drills, Pessoa, lunging. And also there's quite a big hill out of my yard that's about 400 meters long. It is on a road, but I wear 9 different flashing lights, lots of high vis on me and the horse, and just walk up and down the hill in like a equiband training system. You can do it without anything at all. It's good for me in terms of my bum is on fire by the end of it. And it's good for the horse because uphill really activates the glutes. Downhill really activates the thoracic sling, which are the muscles that hold up the withers and take them off the forehand. So you don't have to be doing like long rides or riding at all, literally doing stuff in the stable. So the physio I mentioned, Gillian Tabor, she did a really good webinar about things you can do over winter. So even things like you're putting your hands on your horse's withers and gently rocking them side to side, have a look at the shoulder muscles as you do that, and you can really see them activate. You can do the same if you put your hand on the top of your horse's dock and rock them side to side. You can really see the core activate, and you can do the pelvic tilt. So when you run your fingers down the bum and they kind of like stretch the back, that's all training. Doing stretches is training. So I do much shorter sessions. I focus on schoolwork and mainly doing up and down the hill. Sometimes I'll ride and trot up the hill and walk down. So it depends what facilities you have, but I schedule my training to fit in with the fact it's dark.
Thank you.
No worries.
Beth, could you kindly put up the name of that video that you've mentioned a couple of times, maybe on the Facebook page, or send it to me and I'll add it to your recording as well.
Yeah, no problem. I can probably link her in. She might even, she is really good at webinars, so it might even be worth messaging her and asking if she could do one for you guys.
Yeah, that would be wonderful.
Yeah.
Great.
Okay, well, I would say that is, no one else have any questions? If you do have questions, feel free to get in touch with me anyway, if you don't want to ask them now, or if you think of anything later. Thank you for having me.
And thank you so much.
No worries. Have a good evening, everyone, and also Merry Christmas, and hopefully see you guys next year competing.
Thank you, Beth.
No worries. Bye, guys.
Thank you, Beth.
Everyone.